Hey everybody. So in this video I'm going to discuss current research around massage therapy and how it relates back to influencing how pain is regulated in the human body. I'm going to briefly go over studies in the field, some physiology and neurology, and how it relates back to how I can see massage therapy helping pain-riddled clients. So before I bring up any evidence-based stuff, I'm just going to lay out a few things that'll become relevant and I'll reference them later in the video. So the first thing is I just want to lay out what nociceptors are. Nociceptors are a sensory neuron that responds to damaging or potentially damaging stimuli by sending possible threat signals to the spinal cord and brain. Now, there are many types of nociceptors in the body, and two groups that I'm going to focus on are peptogeric nociceptors and non-peptogeric nociceptors. So, the peptogeric group is more related to mechanical stressors from stimuli. So, you can think of these as our actual physiological injuries, such as burns, scrapes, scars, or whatever you think of. The non-peptogeric group is more closely related to the limbic system, which has to do more with emotional response, memory, previous injury, history, and experiences. Now, both of these nociceptors send signals to the brain, and the brain interprets these signals from both types and determines on how much pain to relay to the area or if there will be referral pain past the affected area. An example would be if we take two different people, one who's never broken a bone before, is very fearful of breaking a bone, and is told that it's very painful, they're likely to experience a higher level of pain than if we compare that to a hardened impact athlete or a rugby player who gets injured on a regular basis and they know what to expect and they know how to handle it. They're likely to feel less pain from the same break. Moving on from nociceptors, I just want to lay out what a nocebo effect is. So, the nocebo effect is the opposite of the placebo effect. Nocebo effect is a detrimental effect on health produced by psychological or psychosomatic factors such as negative expectations, treatment, or prognosis. But with those definitions out of the way, let's start talking about massage and how some studies can relate back to that and how it influences pain. So the first bit of evidence that we'll look at is a meta-analysis. It's appropriately titled a meta-analysis of massage therapy research. So in this analysis, they took 37 studies and found that after only one visit of massage therapy, people had reduced anxiety, blood pressure, and heart rate. However, they also found that immediate assessment of pain, cortisol level, and negative mood were not affected. But after multiple treatments, they had reduced delayed assessment of pain. But one of the greatest strengths of this analysis was that the reduction in trait anxiety and depression were the most affected variable. So they actually reported that it had a similar magnitude to that of psychotherapy, which will become pretty relevant in a bit. The next piece of evidence comes from a study called The Association of Depression and Anxiety with Pain, a study from the NESDA, in which they examined the influence of depression along with anxiety on pain-related disability, pain intensity, and pain location in a large sample of adults with and without a depressive or anxiety disorder. The study population consisted of 2,981 participants, and what the authors concluded was that depression and anxiety not only have a very high correlation with musculoskeletal pain, but also cardiorespiratory and gastro pain, and that depression and anxiety share the same pathophysiological pathways as pain and can have a reciprocal effect on each other, which would explain these associations. Moreover, even a remitted disorder has a strong association with pain. Now, if we think back to how nociceptors relay potentially painful stimulus to the brain, such as non-peptogeric nociceptors to the limbic brain, we can start to see how massage therapy affects pain. Next bit of evidence actually has to do with a specific condition known as fibromyalgia, which is fairly commonly diagnosed. The paper is called Classifying Fibromyalgia Syndrome as a Mental Disorder in Ambulatory Assessment Study. In this, the authors tracked somatic symptom disorders, known as SSD, such as anxiety, somatic illness beliefs, time and energy spent to pain, and health concerns, in 28 people that were suffering from fibromyalgia symptoms. The results were, on average, SSD symptoms occurred 3 to 4 times daily and were mild to moderate in severity. Furthermore, the symptoms were both concurrently associated with momentary pain intensity and subjective impairment by pain. 20% of the variance in pain intensity and 28% of the variance in subjective impairment were explained by momentary variables, such as SSD symptoms and the intake of pain medication. 82% of the people with fibromyalgia symptoms fulfilled the psychological SSD criterion when considering everyday occurring symptoms with at least mild severity. And in saying all that, the authors concluded that fibromyalgia may be diagnosed as a mental illness in many cases. This is important because fibromyalgia was previously diagnosed using a sensitivity point system where doctors or physios or any sort of health profession would point on, I think it was 16 points on the body, and if the majority of them were painful, then you'd be diagnosed as having fibromyalgia, or at least that was a big part of the assessment. And it was usually thought as a physiological pain syndrome. But nowadays, it's actually shifting into more of a mental illness assessment, which is very interesting. Now, before I talk about what I think about all this as a registered massage therapist, I just want to address some concerns about other claims made about how massage therapy helps with pain. There are many people who would claim that massage therapy breaks up fascial adhesions or scar tissue. These claims have little to no evidence to back them up, which will be a whole other video in itself. The fact remains that the strongest evidence to support massage therapy is that it seems to have a much more profound effect on the nervous system, rather than mainly physiological as was once thought. Pain is sent to our brain from both mechanical and emotional stimulus. So if we were to think of some examples, a good one would be a broken bone. So let's say someone breaks a bone. Initially, they'll have a lot of pain from that, but once it's been casted, after a couple weeks, you're gonna not really feel that pain anymore. The damage is still there, the bone's still broken, but the pain's gone. Some other examples would be like if someone pinched your skin, or if you stepped on a Lego, there's no real tissue damage, but there was pain. Some more extreme examples would be like phantom limb syndrome, so like people who have lost an arm or leg or something, and yet they experience pain in the limb that they lost. Those would be some pretty good examples of that. And now I'm not saying that massage therapy doesn't work, but I'm also not saying that pain is purely psychological. I'm just saying that pain is complex, and in many cases it's closely related to our emotions, anxieties, and behaviors. Massage therapy has evidence showing how it can influence our nervous system to induce relaxation. If we can use massage therapy as a tool to de-threaten movement and activity and help people feel less pain, then I feel like massage therapy has done its job as a profession. This is just a way of explaining how massage therapy affects us, rather than pushing the scar tissue reduction or trigger point narrative, which has far less supporting evidence. Now, personally, I use massage therapy as a tool to complete a treatment, not as the entire treatment itself. The end goal for this is, like I mentioned before, usually getting people to return to activity, whether that's sport, starting strength training for the first time, or even small bouts of enjoyable activity. As one of the benefits of being a registered massage therapist in Canada is that part of our standards of practice is exercise and home care recommendations. The benefits of exercise is not understated. I mean, just to name a few, increased muscle density and strength. Both of those will reduce risk of musculoskeletal damage. Increased coordination, which is doubly important if you're in an elderly population. It improves your mood and also helps with anxiety. There are so many benefits, which is that's another video topic for another day that I'll likely cover. However, using massage therapy as a tool in conjunction with activity is, my opinion, the best bang for your buck you can get. Now, that's keeping in mind the type of activity is very nuanced for each person, depending on the level of physical preparedness, what activities the person enjoys, and grading the risk versus reward factor for any particular activity, as well as obvious weaknesses and motor pattern faults to some degree. Anyway, I hope this was informative, sorry. Feel free to check out the studies I listed in the description below. But either way, thanks for listening.